welcome to today's episode of Biz Real Talk, where we're talking all around perfectionism and high standards. What's the difference? Well, to unpack this with me, we've got our gorgeous panelists. We've got our Helena, both Amy's and Jennifer. So I'm not sure who to pick today to dive in, but I think, I'm going to get center of my screen. Amy P, let's go to you. First of all, you're going to open the show today. So what do you think? I know you're a bit perfectionist, but what do you think the difference is between perfectionism and high standards?
So the way I see it, perfectionism can be seen in two ways. It can be seen as a positive, but it can also have a negative connotation attached to it, especially if you are always striving for everything to be perfect, because perfect doesn't exist and perfect is different for everybody. Like what I think is perfect would be completely different to what someone else thinks is perfect. So you're almost striving for something that doesn't really exist. Whereas high standards, if you have high standards and you're working constantly to the best of your ability, I feel that can only have a positive side to it. I mean, for me, in my normal job, so I'm a permanent makeup technician, obviously I do have perfectionist tendencies because I'm tattooing people's faces. My clients want to have an incredible job. They want the perfect eyebrows, they want perfect eyeliner, lips. And I say to everyone that comes in, I'm like, look, perfect doesn't exist, but I will always aim to do the absolute best that I possibly can for everyone that walks through the door. And I say that to them, but inside I'm like, they will be perfect. I just can't help it. So yes, I mean, I think we all have moments where we want things to be perfect, and I do think that that is maybe a side effect to having high standards. But it's just knowing, I think, when it's a positive and when it can possibly turn into a negative, and understanding that, you know, sometimes you just have to aim for as good as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think for me it's the motivation behind it, if that makes sense. So if the motivation behind getting as close to perfection as possible is a fear response, for example, then that is a negative. But if it's because you're wanting to do a great job of something, because that's the, I always I've always said quality over quantity, and I wholeheartedly meet that. It's always quality over quantity. That to me is high standards. But there have been times where I've then slipped into that perfectionism element, and I'll keep working and working and working on something because it's not perfect yet. It needs to be perfect. And actually that means I'm having an emotional response to something. I'm being triggered. And I've been fortunate enough to learn the difference between the two. I mean, obviously we all work with women who are going to mirror us and that have those tendencies too. So I just want to come to Helena a minute. You know, when do you see it the most, and when do you experience it for yourself?
I feel it's kind of like if I go to the working example, because I was just thinking, what Amy shared. And it was kind of like if I go into Canva and try to design something for me, like for my website or whatever, like I'm such a perfectionist. I love colors. It will take me days, if not weeks, to figure out something and then da-da-da and da-da-da, right? But so learning that about myself, and also, I'm visual and I used to work in PR and branding, and like, so I have all this like demands for myself that I just sometimes, are very hard to kind of like reach. But when I delegate that to my VA, I'm like, 3 steps in, I'm like, it's okay. This is good enough. Like, you've done a good job and you've saved me a lot of time. So I see it more from that perspective of like, what is a high standard for me? And like, how does that save me time? But it also, of course, looks beautiful, presentable, all the things that needs to be. But for that, I need to give clear instructions. I need to be very clear on what it is that I want to achieve. I need to be very clear of the steps of like who and what, and delegating. Because that often reminds me when people are like, yeah, like I'm great at something that they do. For example, somebody who puts together, I don't know, my shelves or something, but they're like, but I just would never do this job because I'm such a perfectionist and I would always feel unhappy with myself. And I'm like, that's a very odd kind of, place to like, it's a very odd mindset. Like, but I get it, but it's like, but it's preventing you from actually doing something that you're very good at. You would be earning a lot of money with it if you want to, but you would just need to shift that mindset from actually, people appreciating because they don't have to. The stress of putting like, shelves up, it's just too much for me, but for somebody who's very, like it takes them like maybe half an hour, it would take me weeks. So I think it does come down to becoming the expert in the fields, and we're always as entrepreneurs kind of like exploring that. And there's always like that next thing, if it's not your core offer, then it's like your branding and marketing. And if it's not that, then it's your sales. And then if it's not that, then it's your client delivery. And if it's not that, then it's like something new, like, like something came up and you need, like, there's always this striving for perfection. But at the same time, and especially in these times when there's like so much of things available to us, we really have to appreciate what is already there and what is at the core of like, what is kind of the core value of ourselves personally, but also, of the business or whatever, you want to call that, and be grateful and be like just working at it and just like let it fly, even if it's not perfect, even if you have to show up, messy hair, whatever, but you show up for the client, or something like that, and you show up for yourself basically through that.
Yeah. I mean, Amy B, obviously working with a lot of CEO women, and I'm guessing you see the perfectionism element quite a
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely. Um, and I think for me, the distinction between high standards and perfectionism is, I think it alludes to what you said, which is, and I heard someone speak on this, and it completely blew my mind. And she said, perfectionism is the biggest cop out that you can give yourself, because in chasing perfectionism, you never have to complete what you're doing. And I really took that on, because I would have said, oh, I'm a perfectionist. It's a good thing. But I did look at how much it slowed me down. And I think a lot of the work that I do with like the woman I work with is around 90% is good enough. Sometimes 70% is good enough. Like, is that 10%, 20%, 30% going to really move the needle? But maybe in the opposite way of what you said, it is, it's how you are at the end of that. Like, am I beating myself up because it wasn't perfect? Or am I going, we got to that, we achieved an outcome and we can move on? So I think perfectionism is a way to just like beat yourself up, because you, like the other Amy said, you can't achieve it. And so then it's just a way to beat yourself up if it's not good enough, or to just actually never deliver what you said because you're trying to deliver something perfect. And so I personally don't think there's anything to be said for perfectionism. Like, I absolutely want the person tattooing my face to be giving me the absolute best, but like to go, well, if it's not perfect, like, you've ruined my face, it wouldn't be fair to Amy and would be unrealistic. So I don't think perfectionism serves anyone. I think learning the art of what is good enough in order for me to get the outcome I'm chasing. And if you're beating yourself up because you don't get it and you can't take those lessons away and implement them for next time, then it's to me, it's not a healthy thing. And so a lot of the work I do with the CEOs I work with is finding their range of like good enough, and sometimes it's 99%, and we work it backwards, because it actually fuels their business when they don't waste that, 80% of their time moving the needle by 20%. They actually move the business by 80%, because the work that they're doing is having an impact. So it's, to me, I guess all of that, it's a cost benefit, right? why chase perfectionism when it's actually not going to serve you in any way? Maybe your ego a bit, but you're never going to achieve it. So from a business point of view, what does it achieve?
Yeah, you're right, because and I know that quote that you're talking about and what you had, because I've heard it too. And it made me realize that my procrastination was all it was the cop out. It was definitely, it's not perfect. I need to be seen to be, be doing this in a certain way because, the marketing agency, I'll give that as an example. When I was, you know, if you're putting yourself out as a marketing agency, you need to be perfect, right? Because otherwise clients aren't going to want to work with you. But actually, like you said, there's no such thing as perfection. And I look at that stuff, and actually the stuff that I knocked up in a matter of minutes was much better and much more, had more engagement than the stuff I spent 3-4 hours on.
Yeah.
It's some of the cleverest marketing has been like when someone's made a mistake, and rather than trying to hide it, they've like played on it and gone, we stuffed up. And they have these huge campaigns fall out of it because it's real and people can relate to it.
I mean, I'll never forget, I did, so when I first got into coaching and started trying to build my audience, I did mind dump sheets pretty much every day. And it was just scribbled down on paper, and then I'd done this. And I took pictures of it, and something along the lines of the most productive days can sometimes start off the messiest. The engagement on that was huge, and it was just a picture of like my scribbly writing on 2 sheets of paper, lined paper, but people resonated with it. And there was me going, why have I just put, after I posted it, I was like, why have I just put that out? That looks so messy. It doesn't, you know, that was the light bulb moment for me, that actually when people say to me, done is better than perfect, it's so true. I mean, Jennifer, you're nodding. Love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think it links with authenticity. So if we're being authentic, then we need to appreciate that things are never perfect. You know, we can strive to do the best that we can, but perfectionism in and of itself is unrealistic. Like it's in perfectionism, you're setting standards that are unattainable, that are unrealistic to meet and to maintain. So why would you do that to start with? And the other part is, how authentic is it that the only thing you're willing to put out is something that you've actually sweated blood over? And like, is that the message you want to give to the world? That the only part of me that's good enough is the stuff I've sweated blood over? It's like, whoa, that's setting up a really high set of expectations, not just for yourself, but for everybody else. It's interesting. I in my earlier life, I used to run a handicraft business. So my first business was at 9, which is pretty young for an entrepreneur. But at 9, I was starting to work with handicraft business. By 14, I was running a market stall and selling handicrafts each weekend. And what I learned in that process is that the thing that makes arts and crafts so special and so unique and authentic is often the errors. It's often the parts that we think aren't quite perfect. It really says it's handmade. If you look at a piece of mass production pottery, it's done in a slip mold. Everyone looks identical. They're all absolutely the same, and they're perfect as per the mold. But you look at something that a potter's made, and you can see the, minor variations. And that's the sign that someone's hands touched that someone made that with their being, that they shaped that and formed that. So to me, those things that we might say are imperfect are actually personal and real and authentic. You look at stones, and one of the first sign of a synthetic stone is no imperfections. It's a sure sign it's not a real stone. There's very, very, very few real high quality gems that are completely flawless. most stones have tiny imperfections in them. And it's one of the ways people authenticate jewelry, or people authenticate stones anyway, is to see the slight imperfections within them. And yet we don't say that stone is not brilliant, that it's not a magnificent stone. We don't expect it to be perfect. So why do we expect ourselves to be perfect?
I was about to say, is that because, so really what we're looking at here, the expectations that we perceive from other people, from our clients, from our customers, if you're in a product-based business, you know, your customers and clients will have a certain expectation of you. And are we trying, sometimes it's nice and it's healthy to try and exceed those expectations. But I think we set a much higher expectation on ourselves than what our clients and customers do.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with high standards. Like I definitely have high standards. But the interesting thing with quality is that 80% of the work is required to achieve the final 20% of quality. So you really have to look at that from a cost-benefit analysis for your business, which is what Amy was talking about before. Are you really wanting 100% absolute quality when it's going to take you so much more effort to achieve that? And is that really what your customers want? Do they really want that absolute errorless state that they're going to be paying for? Or
Yeah.
are they after the best that you can do?
I think on that though, it's you can have perfectionism in this one thing that differentiates you. I think what you often find is people who say, I'm a perfectionist, they go for that in everything. And that is where it doesn't serve you. If you make high quality shoes and people are paying $5,000, like I'm actually wanting perfection in my shoe, basically, right? Like as far as my eye can see, I want my $5,000 shoe, hypothetical shoe to be clear, to be perfect. But it doesn't mean that the marketing, all the other stuff that went into giving me my perfect shoe had to be perfect. So I don't think we should say you never need to do something perfect, because it might be that one thing, and I would say Amy P is doing this, like perfectionism. But if she held herself to that standard at every single point of everything she did, from ordering ink and new utensils and all of that, that's where it gets very dangerous.
For me, though, my work is only as good as the canvas that I'm working on.
Yeah.
So if I've got someone who walks through the door with incredible skin, looks after it, has a great diet, is sun safe, I know that my work is going to look incredible on that skin. If I have someone who comes in who's been on the lash the night before, hasn't slept for a week, has the worst diet in the world, has horrendous skin, my work will only be so good. And I think me understanding my personal limits are kind of limited with the canvas that I'm working on, then I think that's when it's high standards rather than perfectionism for me, because I will always give everyone my highest, my best. I will always give my best. But yeah, it's the canvas that you're working on. And as Jennifer said earlier, with the potter and everything's got slight differences. Like, you can find beauty in things that aren't perfect. And I think if we look at everything from that point of view, everything will just be so much nicer for everybody. Less stress. Who wants stress anyway?
I mean, where do we think perfectionism plays out in different types of businesses? We're going to have obviously service-based, product-based businesses watching this. We're going to have people who are potentially coaches, in all different areas of business. Where do we think we see perfectionism play out the most? Obviously, marketing is, everybody I speak to has this perfectionist mindset, trying to be everything's perfect in the marketing, and that's just not realistic. But where else in business does this really play out, we think?
Everywhere there's people. Perfectionism isn't about an aspect of business. It's about us as a person. It's about, it's often driven by fear and anxiety. Like, I don't want to be seen as failing, as falling short of the best possibility. So it's really about, for me, it's about what's the emotional tone that's sitting with your work. If it's pride and you're really taking joy and delight in doing the best quality work that you can do, and you appreciate that sometimes it isn't absolutely perfect, despite the fact that you've given it your best, I'd see that as a growth mindset. But if at the end of the day you're going to fall apart and be absolutely devastated and sort of can't face yourself because you failed at something, well, I kind of think that's a really dangerous place. So
Yeah.
to me, that would be true perfectionism, like where you're self-deprecating if you fail to meet some unrealistic standard.
Mm.
I don't know. What's your thought?
Well, I feel this, I mean, from my experience and being online in the online business, but then, mixing that with, brick and mortar businesses as well. I feel, people have high expectations, but also because society just kind of presents us with this, you're supposed to look like this and you're supposed to think like this. And if you're a marketer, then you're supposed to show up like this. But it always comes down, like I'm always this, like, but you're unique, and your unique set of your life story, your unique set of, DNA and, where you grew up and, how you were thought to think and feel and believe about yourself is kind of like what makes you unique. And that's why a certain type of people will go to Amy, right? Like, and for me, if somebody told me go and do your thing, like, when somebody shared that with me once, she was a cosmetician and she was like, oh, you would look so beautiful if you just did your this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I just looked at her just like, that is just so rude. Like, it's just so, I'm beautiful. Like, if you don't like natural people, I mean, that's okay. But this is me. This is my perfection. I don't care about my hair being this and that. Like, it's just like you have to know who you're talking to and you have to know who your client is and who your client isn't. And be, you know, with experience, you also get much more relaxed and not be so tough on the client or on yourself and be much more realistic and more like, empathic, if you will, or just, have a humor around it for sure.
Yeah, I think back to, you mentioned bricks and mortar. I remember having my first bricks and mortar shop, and it took me 6 weeks. It was tiny. It took me 6 weeks to decorate and put everything in place before opening because I was trying to reach perfection.
Hmm.
And then when I was just like, I can't delay this opening no more. I can't delay so much. I've just got to do it. And it was as far from perfect as I could be. But within the time that was there, we tweak things and improve things. And I just had to accept, back then, I didn't have the self-awareness to understand where that was coming from. But I just had to accept that it was what it was.
Hmm.
And actually, the comments I got was, I love your shop. It's beautiful. I love, because it was handmade products. It was like resin products. It was wax mats. It was t-shirts and clothing printing. There were so many elements to that business. And actually, everybody, like jewelry, everybody who walked through the door had nothing negative to say.
Hmm.
And I used to tell them, oh, well, yeah, we're going to switch that around soon because it doesn't quite look as presentable as I'd like it. And they're like, what you want about? Your window displays are gorgeous. And that's when my mindset started to change a little bit. And I started to not be so much of a perfectionist and really step into high standards and started to acknowledge what was high standards and what was something else. And at the time, I didn't understand it was a fear response. It was just, I think it definitely was a fear response. But yeah, that's when my mindset started to switch. But I think it's really important for us to activate that rather than, I got that validation, if you like, from people who are walking through the doors.
Hmm.
Sometimes we need to be able to validate that ourselves. Does that make sense? So
Daily, for sure.
how do we start to develop those skills of being able to understand that actually it is good enough?
Okay, well, I kind of jump around a bit and say, there's one thing about saying it's good enough to start, and I think that's, like starting to just say, I need to put my foot on the ground and start moving, but it doesn't mean that that's where it has to stay. Like, I don't know any business that's successful that doesn't continuously improve what they're doing, because we all want things to be as good as they can be. And with experience and practice and feedback from clients, you get new insights. There's new, resources available. You've got more, more strategies available to you. So you just improve and tweak. So just to recognize that because you start in one place doesn't mean that's where you'll always be. It's just starting. And it's only through starting that you start to get insights as to how to improve from where you are. Nobody starts out being 100% brilliant at what they're doing. We all develop brilliance as we go, but I don't know anybody who started out in business who had everything right. I don't know, maybe you do know somebody, but I certainly didn't. And nobody I know started out getting it all right.
No, I mean, we learn through mistakes, we learn through failures, we learn and we grow through the imperfection, right? And I sometimes wonder whether, looking at the high standards element of this conversation, if the values within our businesses are actually a good marker for high standards and to stop us going into that perfectionism, right? If what we're doing is aligned with those values, those core values we've set, I would be quite comfortable in thinking, actually, if it's in line with that, I am still giving high standards without slipping into that negative mindset of everything needs to be perfect. What's everyone's thoughts? Who wants to jump in?
I think it's hard.
Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
I think it's hard to go like, we can sit there and go, oh, we just want to be perfect. But if someone was to actually say to you, what does everything being perfect look like? Could you even articulate it? Like, it's kind of like a phrase that we say and hold ourselves to without actually thinking about what it means. And I think when you stop and take a step back, you'll be like, I actually couldn't care less if my desk is perfectly tidy. Or, like when we go, I want everything to be perfect, we actually don't. There's certain things we do. And so it's digging into kind of why we do and what's the standard we want to hold. I do agree with you, Sarah, around the values, because it actually has nothing to do with and I think Jennifer, you said this, but like the stuff. Like, it doesn't matter if your store looks perfect. It just has to do with yourself and what you think about it. I think one of the ways, which is quite a good tangible way to start to be kind to yourself, is like, talk to yourself like you're a kid. Like if a kid never gets it perfect, because no one gets it perfect, but like we never like, I can't believe you didn't do that perfectly. I mean, I might say it about the dishwasher sometimes, but like, you're kind of going, it's all right, like you'll get better next time. And like, whether it's sport or unloading the dishwasher or school or whatever, you're like, hey, that's cool, you did your best. Like, that's the internal monologue that you can start to have with yourself. Like, hey, it's a starting point. Because you could look at Nike, and they like started off with these spiked running shoes, and now they're the big, like, where they are now is not where they started. And everyone looks back like that. Probably, what's his name, Phil Knight, he cringed about like how it was some Greek, before it was Nike, it was some other name, and he cringed about what a bad name it was. Like, find me a business owner that doesn't cringe about their first logo or whatever it is. So like, let's be really real with ourselves. We're going to look back with the benefit of hindsight and go, we've progressed. So like, why would you expect to start it perfect? So I think that like, but sometimes for me as an adult, we do that. So to speak to like myself with the kindness I would always speak to my children, that's a kind of tangible way to go, I wouldn't be saying this if you were my kid, Amy. So let's maybe not say this because you are you.
Yeah, no, I get where you're going with this, because as soon as you said that, I was thinking how the specific clients that I work with, and they want the perfect website, and they want everything perfect as if it's a multi-billion pound brand right at the start. And I tell them all the time, it's not realistic. You've got to think they've got whole teams, they're corporations, they've gone through their growth journey, but they didn't start there. And sometimes we just have to accept that, you know, less is more in the beginning, because it's actually going to move you forward. It's a case of just getting started, and everything else, as long as it's good enough and as long as it's presentable and it's true to you and what you're trying to achieve, everything else will come later. And I fell into that trap myself. You sound around saying about logos. Oh, with Angelica Harmony, that first logo, for someone who's a creative, I'm thinking, what was I thinking? And I must have changed that logo probably about 5 times over the course of, I want to say, 3 years. What I ended up with, I really liked in the end, and it was, it was like, it did look like a luxury craft brand. So it did develop into something that I was really proud of. But I think back to the beginning, I was like, oh, but I needed something. I just needed to get moving. And that was good enough at the time to put on some thank you slips to go to craft fairs and things like that. And I think it's important that we remember when we're starting out, even if you have to reframe it as, well, if it's perfect now, I've got nowhere to grow. Do you know what I mean? If I get it perfect now, then where do I go from there? If that is what's going to trick your brain into thinking, let's just move forward. It's good enough. Let's just move forward. Because, like everyone said, my perfectionism was playing out everywhere. I think what I was actually searching for was a feeling of calm and reassurance. Does that make sense? That what I was doing was okay. It was good enough.
The problem is, because even if you had the perfect logo when you start, right? Like, you're like, this is the perfect logo, you will evolve and grow, and it will no longer be the perfect logo for you in 18 months anyway. So, like, if you hold yourself up looking for perfection, you'll be bored of, and because of that feeling that you're saying, because it physically can't deliver that, it's a logo, you'll still be searching for it in 18 months going, I want to rebrand.
Yeah,
Because it's
and I
not
also
about
feel
the
it's a
logo.
lot about the energetics and our own kind of growth and mindset. So I always go to, okay, what kind of people do I want to be working with to give me the peace of mind so that they're appreciative, so they're coachable, so that they pay, so that they do the work, they don't need me to handhold them. So I have a very different clientele than you do, for example. But when I started, my DM was full of people just, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you like, but through time that just changed. Now just people text me when they're like, I want to make, X amount, blah, 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 blah. How can you help me? What is the energetics? What is the mindset? Would you be willing to do this work with me? It's very different. But I have changed massively and created boundaries, creating clarity, and also just being, doing the inner work. I feel that's where it starts. And it's like perfectionism is the word created by the coaching or self-help industry, which it's non-existent, like, right? It's just kind of like why people, we want to be like, there is no such thing. And I feel that, people who are using that in their marketing, they're just creating a wrong vibe. It's sellable, but it's definitely creating a wrong vibe because, yeah.
I think once you've got the inner confidence,
Yeah.
then perfectionism just floats over you.
Yeah.
If you've got that inner confidence that that what you're doing is
Exactly
good enough, it's all that matters, isn't it? As long as you're happy with what you've done, that that you've put everything into it that you can, and you've achieved something that's to you amazing. I think having that inner confidence will definitely help you.
And being really kind to yourself and not making it a life and death situation if there's a mistake. It's like, why would you push yourself so hard? It's bizarre. With my book, when I put that out the first time round, I had 3 different people proofread my book. Even with 3 different people proofreading it, there were still 4 errors.
It's
4 errors that I found as soon as I got the printed book back. And it's like, I knew there were errors. That's why I asked someone else to proofread it, but I couldn't find them until it was published. And it's like, well, I could get really upset about that, or I could just say, well, you know, things sometimes slip through.
I'm
Sometimes
only
you just,
human.
well, yeah. You understand why publishers put those little notes in books to say corrections on page whatever, because despite my best effort, there were still 4 typos. And they were really small, like it was context instead of content and things like that. So they weren't picked up because they were really not obvious ones to get. But I knew they were there once I found them, and it's
But
like,
did
well,
they
am I
ruin
going to?
anyone's experience?
Well, that's exactly it. Like, am I going to
Yeah.
destroy myself over the fact that there were 4 typos? Did it completely destroy the value of the book? Did it mean somebody had the most terrible time reading it? Like, I don't think so. Uh, you know, it
Yeah.
wasn't the case at
Exactly.
all. So
I
it's
had
just,
that many times happen with like American clients. Like I'm very anal when it comes to the words and writing and all the things.
mhm,
So they would come to me and be like, check it out before I post it. And it was like,
mhm,
oh, typo. And then there's the so there was things, of course, but it was about the whole meaning and the whole kind of like, of course, in an A4 kind of like long page, it is important because you wanna be making an impact or you want to educate or you want to solve, right? So it's kind of like, but yeah, I mean, typos are
yeah.
cute.
But you
My
kind of go, sorry.
sorry, Jennifer, carry on.
I was just going to say, 4 typos across 250
Oh,
pages.
come on.
That's actually, like, when you think about that as a number of characters, like, that
Yeah.
is a very, very, very small percentage. And I think sometimes we get ourselves caught up on that level of,
Hmm.
whatever that symbolically represents for someone. And just, you can be really hard on yourself, or you can be gentle and kind to yourself. I'm going, well, things happen.
Yeah, I think where perfectionism kicks in is where you start going into the really nitty-gritty. And when you're looking at tiny, minute details that have no real
Mm,
major impact on what you're delivering or producing, that's when you need to kind of take a step back and go. I mean, perfect example is like some of the stuff that I'm putting out now with like looking at working with an international audience is, and they're going, okay, Americans spell things differently to us in the UK. Which
mhm,
type of spelling do I go with? 3 days. The word panelists, right, for the packs.
Yeah.
Because they're going, have I spelled that right? Have I done the U? 3 days, just sorry, 3 days, just wondering which spelling to use. Like, I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah, but
It's
at the same time, you are actually vetting yourself and going over who is this for? Who will read and resonate with this? And it is important because, like, for like, I once had a call with somebody. She was a mother of like 11 children. I don't know. She wanted to have this, free call. So, but the way she showed up, it was like a messy storage room. I hate messy stuff. It was super messy. And I was like, and she was like, she wanted to do coaching. And I was just like, sure. But like, she has zero standards. And I was just like, I see you. I'm sure you're like great at like whatever it is that you're doing, for mamas and kids and, people who come from the background. But it's like, just the lack of some type of standards. For me, that was just like, I couldn't work with that, right? Like it was, I don't know, for me that means a lack of structure, a lack of some type of discipline, like there's meaning to it. There's something, tied to it. And so the high standard to that was like, she was lovely, she's still a fan, but it was like I could not work with that type of situation. It was too messy for me. And I love working with messiness, but it was just a different type of messiness. And so it's just kind of like you pick and choose your battles.
Yeah. And you talking about messiness. I mean, I know that when I'm in launch and I'm in pre-launch, and this is where it overlaps with business, like everything else goes out the window. So I don't spend as much time in, say, mum duties, as far as obviously the tidying, the organised. I'm like, they're only going to mess it up again in 10 minutes, so I'm just going to leave it. I like the toys will be out for it. Like, especially when my grandson comes over, who's been over the weekend, and I know I've got a busy week. I'm like, is he coming over again this week? I'm just going to leave them where they are. It's completely unpractical. Everyone's tripping over them. But my mind is so focused on being perfect in other areas of my life, i.e. my business. But it also says a lot about my mindset and the standards I'm setting for myself and how I'm feeling about those standards. And it's a bit, when that happens, it's a bit of a wake-up call for me. It makes me reflect a little bit and go, okay, well, my perfectionism is playing out, but it's not playing out in my home environment. So where is it playing out? Because I know subconsciously that perfectionism is my go-to when I'm scared, when I'm not feeling at my best, when I'm just not feeling confident, is when my perfectionism comes out. That fear of abandonment, fear of failure, fear of things not going as I want them to go. You're attracted to the cocoa butter, obviously. But when, I know perfectionism shows up in some area of my life. So when it's not showing up in my immediate environment, I straight away think, okay, where is it showing up? And try and work on it and work on why. I think obviously we're coming towards the end of today's episode. So I just want to kind of ask you ladies, how do we start to recognize when we're slipping into perfectionism as opposed to high standards? And, how do we start to work on that so that we're moving forward with high standards and not that perfectionism, scarcity, fear mindset?
I hear. So for me, it's taking a deep breath and being like, okay, I'm here now, reminding myself that I'm here now. How do I feel in my body? And also to replace this, like, it's not perfect, it's not this, it's not that, with, am I being present? Am I being present? Am I being in the space? Am I being in like, where did my mind go? Why am I being anxious? What am I overthinking? I'm an overthinker, like, but it's like, calm myself down, do 10 push-ups, whatever, just to get myself into the body, do a meditation, take a sleep, take whatever, do some other things, cuddle with my pet, with my dog, like something that is just very different. And then, just get my present back. That's basically it.
Thank you, Helena. I love that. Jennifer, what are your thoughts?
I like that around breathing and being present. It's like, I suppose it's about monitoring how you're feeling. And if your focus is around being anxious and fearful, then it's kind of time to perhaps breathe and step back a bit and realize that you're perhaps asking the wrong questions or asking too much of yourself. And if you're after a quality, like something to be of high quality, then the feelings are usually you're pleased. It might be a little frustrating that you haven't quite got it, but you're pleased with the effort. You feel positive feelings about the work you're doing and the progress you're making. So just to monitor, like, what are the feelings that you're having around something? And if they're constantly anxious or fearful, then perhaps it could be, how could you step into, what could you appreciate?
Yeah.
I mean, I was never one for journaling, but just hearing you speak then, Jennifer, actually, that's exactly what I do when I journal. I look at the emotions I'm experiencing and maybe the triggers, and how it's playing out. And I generally slightly different way, because then I'll put action points of how the things I can start doing, the steps I can start taking to resolve any negative feelings I have.
Mm-hmm.
That's my kind of tip. And that's from somebody who never used to journal, didn't have time for it. I can't go there. It's too emotional. What the hell do I write? You know, now I use it in a way of just exploring and reflecting the good, the bad, the ugly, and coming up with maybe like I do in a coaching session with my clients, 3 action steps that I can take in the next 24 hours that will help to ease my anxiety or reduce or get clarity on the situation and what's real and what's actually just a perception. I mean, Amy, which Amy we're going to go to? Amy B. We're going to say Amy B first.
Yeah, I think one of the practical things for me when you stay within when that's coming up, well, often, like we were talking about, like marketing before, right? Like you want it to be perfect. Like truth, and I'd say the same about like you want to make $1 million. You actually don't care about making $1 million. You care about the experience of $1 million. So if you're trying to put out the perfect post, you actually don't care that it looks perfect. You care about the outcome that it creates. And so when you can distinguish those two things, when your perfectionism flares up, when you're like, why am I not letting this go? Is it like, does this have to be perfect to get me a, and I say perfect in air quotes, outcome, so like a high standards outcome? Those two things are very different. And so that can be a question to go, if I put this out into the world at 90%, could I still theoretically get that amazing outcome? And when you can ask yourself that and you've taken a step back and you're not caught in that moment, you can normally go, oh yeah, like if my blue is not quite the right blue I need it to be, or my wording on an email is not quite perfect, or I have 4 spelling mistakes in the book I release, is that going to have like ruin the impact that I'm trying to create? It's really, and it will help guide you into actually, yes, this is something I feel very strongly about, or no, I can see how I could still achieve that. And so that's something that is quite, I find quite practical to use.
Yeah, I love that. I do. That's a really good logical way of looking at it, I think. We are coming close to the end. Amy P, what are your thoughts, my lovely?
Sometimes I feel that perfectionism can also be closely linked to comparison. So when you're looking at things other people are doing and going, well, that looks perfect, why doesn't mine look perfect? And then you're striving for perfection. It's like, just stop comparing what you're doing, because you're doing you, they're doing them. And I think if you're constantly pushing for that perfection, it's not going to feel good. It's not going to come from a place of happiness. It's not going to come from a place of joy, and it's going to come across, as Helena says, you know, the energetics of it. If you're working really, really hard on a Facebook post to go out and you're making sure it's perfect and you're taking like 3-4 days to get it done and get the graphics done, and you don't get the result from it that you want, compared to something that you scribbled on a piece of paper, took a picture of, put it out there, it's coming from a totally different place. So I think it's letting go of that perfectionism. If it feels bad, if it doesn't feel good, then go for a walk. Come back with fresh eyes and a fresh feeling.
And the beauty of all of our businesses is that we're all different, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's all being different. We won't want a world where everything and everyone is the same. So you kind of learn, I think, to appreciate yourself and what you bring to the table and get comfortable with that. Just before we go to Jennifer's words of wisdom, I just want to ask anybody if they've got anything else they'd like to say today. In that case, we are going to go over to our lovely Jennifer. We love your words of wisdom, Jennifer. And I'm just wondering if you have got something for us today.
I do. So perfectionism If you imagine walking along a tightrope and you're strung up really high above the ground and you're trying to walk along the tightrope, that's sometimes the experience of perfectionism, of doing something that's really, really, really hard and has inherent risks. Having high standards, you could say, is a bit like hiking up a steep mountain. So still hard work, but a lot safer. You might fall over, but you dust yourself off and you keep going. Whereas for the tightroper or tight, that's right, tight rope. Yeah. If you're walking on a tight rope and you're the person walking across, falling over is much more self-destructive. Like there's a lot more pain in falling off the tightrope than there is in falling over, walking up a steep mountain. Both are doing something hard, but one's kind of, the mountain trail, you can still make really good progress. You can still achieve something really great. You can see amazing views and you can do it with relative safety.
I love that. Because every time I go into perfectionist behaviors now, I'm going to think of that. I'm going to think, actually, perfectionism is a business killer. Because of it, that whole kind of walking across the tightrope. If I fall, I don't want that route. I want the one that's still going to challenge me, but I'm going to get the desired outcome. I'm more likely to get the outcome I want. So
yeah.
I just want to thank you all for the conversation today. I think hay fever season is really here because my eyes keep streaming, so I apologize. But thank you for bringing all your insights and advice to everyone who's viewing today. And to the viewers, thank you for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation. You've got some golden nuggets that you can implement in your business and start to look at and help you move the needle. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.